This episode is brought to you by Progressive Insurance. Do you ever find yourself playing the budgeting game? Shifting a little money here, a little there, and hoping it all works out? Well, with the Name Your Price tool from Progressive, you can be a better budgeter and potentially lower your insurance bill too. You tell Progressive what you want to pay for car insurance, and they'll help you find options within your budget. Try it today at progressive.com. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. Price and coverage match limited by state law. Not available in all states. Hello and welcome to Vulgar History, a feminist women's history comedy podcast. My name is Anne Foster and this is our Regency Era. This season we're talking about people who lived in the United Kingdom, mostly in England, in the early 1800s during what is known as the Regency Era. And I've been hoping that this season can really show an expansive view of all the sorts of different people who were living there at the time, not just the royal family, but just the everyday people, and also to look at what society was like for all kinds of walks of life. And that's why I'm really happy today to be able to be talking to you about Sarah Biffin, who was an artist from this time period, one of the most successful women artists of Regency era England. And she was also a woman living with disability. She had limb differences from a condition called focomelia. And we'll talk about what that means. And by we, I mean myself and the guest I have for the podcast today. I'm joined by the amazing Kristen Lopez, who's a longtime friend of the podcast and friend of me. She's an author, she's an entertainment journalist, and she, when we were trying to find ways that we could collaborate, she has a new book out called Popcorn Disabilities, which we talk about in this episode. She can explain to you more about what that book is about. But ultimately, she's really interested in the history of people with disabilities, of disabled history, and so she is such a perfect guest to bring on to talk about this. Really cool, entrepreneurial woman, Sarah Biffin, who I think it's great that Sarah Biffin is becoming more widely known. And now that you're all listening to this episode, you'll know about her too. So please enjoy my conversation with Kristen Lopez about Sarah Biffin. Today, I'm joined by entertainment journalist and author, Kristen Lopez. Kristen, welcome to Vulgar History.
Thank you so much for wanting to chat with me. I feel very, very cool right now. So I've been long-time listener, first-time caller.
Well, and I've been on your podcast before, so now it's just it's a bit different. I'm the one coming in with the facts and figures, and you're the one coming in with the hot takes. So
I try.
Yeah, so we should say that you're the host of Ticklish Business, the podcast about, well, you talk about movies, but it's all like classic old movies, right?
Yeah, pre 1975-ish.
And so I do want to quickly say, like, in terms of like why you're on this particular episode with me today, we're talking about a disabled person from the Regency era history. And your most recent book is Popcorn Disabilities, and explain what that is about.
Yeah, it's a book about the history of disabled representation in the movies, told by a disabled person who grew up on a lot of movies, ultimately examining how movies set a standard for what disability is and how that affects a generation of disabled people who grow up on these movies, as well as abled audiences who get, unfortunately, a very skewed picture that leads to a lot of awkward encounters with actual disabled people in their lives. So it's both history, social analysis, a lot of snark, while looking at some of the most beloved films to ever star a lot of able-bodied people playing disabled.
Well, and this is where we were talking with each other and we were like, how can I have you on my show so you can talk about your book? And you're like, well, I don't know if there's like a disabled person from the Regency era.
Yeah.
I was like, Kristen, guess what? There is.
Which I should have realized, because not to jump ahead, but this is kind of like peak disabled times, the Regency, like the 1800s. Dickens publishes Christmas Carol in 1846, which creates pretty much the prototype for every disabled character known to man. So it's not, I shouldn't have been surprised that there was somebody, but history is written by the abled. I did not know.
Well, and this is, Sarah Biffin is somebody who I'll mention, we're going to tell the biography, everybody, just sit tight. If you're new to Vulgar History, we have tangents. But so Sarah Biffin was an artist at this time, and the first large-scale exhibition in modern time of her work was in 2022, and she's been getting more and more attention. Actually, I think I have it in my notes here. So one of her pieces went up for auction at Sotheby's in, I want to say 2019. Yeah, it was one of her self-portraits that she painted in 1821, and it was sold at auction. And when they went to sell it at auction, like it had been sold at auction in 1986 from somebody to somebody, and it went for like $2,000. And so they're like, well, that was a while ago. Like, it's a miniature. That was what she painted were like small paintings. And they're like, well, these other miniature artists from this time, their pieces would sell for like $500, $1,000. And this one for 137,500 pounds.
Wow.
Which is the most that like any work of this type from that era has ever gone for. And that speaks to the fact that her name is becoming more famous. And the fact that it's a self-portrait is even more special, because it's just like, who painted this? Oh, her. Like, oh, I know. Like, so she's becoming better known now. Yeah.
When people say there's no money in disability, I'm going to start pointing to that and be all, actually, there is.
We're going to talk about how she made a career. Like, I don't want to jump ahead, but it's interesting that you're here, like, as a film reviewer, as a film journalist, because I was like, part of my instinctive first thought whenever I read an interesting story about any woman from history, I'm like, why isn't there a movie about this? And then I was thinking about your book, and I'm like, I'm glad there's not a movie about this, because it probably would have been made in 1992 starring Helena Bonham Carter, like with like, you know, green screens on her arms and legs. And it's like,
that is actually perfect casting right there. Yeah. You would have definitely gotten like either Juliette Binoche probably might have done this, or Ormond, Julia Ormond, either one of the brunette, foreign women of that time. But I don't think they would have CG, because the early 90s, CG was still in its infancy. So odds are they would have pulled, the John Hurd thing from Elephant Man, and they would have conjured up some sort of contraption or something to like hide her limbs and been like, she suffered for her art. And then she would have like walked away with an Oscar. So, it was not impossible, but as we've seen historically, film does not really like to do stories about disabled women, mostly because, the perception is that they're not fuckable.
Well, and when they do, like you make this clarification in your book, but between sort of like what Sarah Biffin has, which is like limb differences, like she's got an obvious physical, visual, and the sorts of disabilities that show up in film are often like this person is deaf, or like it's something where it's like an able-bodied actor can portray that without having to change their physiology.
The actress, we don't want to mess with this. You don't want to mess with the face. And so usually you'll get a lot of blind, deaf, or nonverbal, or a combination of the two. If you get a wheelchair, they have all their limbs, and it's just some woman sitting in a chair. In this case, I definitely think, even though Sarah Biffin had, nothing affected her face, I still think people would have been like, yeah, no, there's just too much disability there. And I think all of the text at the time that Sarah Biffin lived, emphasizing that she was heavy set, I think they'd have been like, yeah, we can't get a size 0 woman in the part. Like, so I think they would have probably had to add on a fat suit. It would have just been a nightmare, but I'm kind of shocked nobody at like Merchant Ivory or something entertained it for about 5 minutes.
Or even what I could see could have happened but hasn't, would be in a Merchant Ivory film or something set in this kind of setting, or even a Charles Dickens. It's like you just get perhaps a person who has this condition now in the background of a scene doing some painting where you're like, oh my God, that's Sarah Biffin. Like almost like an extra. Like I could see they maybe have that like cameo.
You get like in movies where usually directed by like more oddball directors like David Lynch, or I think it's something like Quills, where you get maybe like a crowd sequence of like the fair, and they show all of the quote unquote freaks. And you probably, would have seen Sarah Biffin, or they would have highly sexualized her and like she just have her top off for no reason or something while painting. I don't know. I could definitely see that too.
Oh my God. If they're like, she has no arms and no legs, but she has boobs. So
exactly.
Like,
she's got rock and rack. It's fine. So, I could definitely, again, kind of shock people haven't done this yet.
Anyway, it was just funny to me that my thought sequence was like, oh, this should be a movie. Then I was like, no.
Exactly. The pros and cons of making movies with disabled women in this state, it hasn't changed much, which is frustrating.
I think that perhaps like in the wake of like this Sotheby's auction 2019, 2022, there was this exhibition, like she's becoming better known. I feel like I know that for a fact, like I'm sure there's people out there, actors who have this same physical like situation who would kill this role if somebody could figure out the financing.
Yeah. I mean, it's frustrating because we are still getting movies about disabled women that are mostly able to pass for able-bodied in many ways. I mean, we're getting a Judy Heumann biopic at some point this year. Having met Judy Heumann in person, she could not pass for able, but I don't really believe Hollywood's going to do much with that. But we're still so outdated in the landscape that I would love to see it. But I think that it requires so many other people having their thought process in the right place. That I'm sure there's actors with, limb difference that, maybe they don't have, arms, but they have legs. You have to CGI, something.
Yeah.
But I so often see CGI used to create, a shrunken Hugh Grant in Wonka or something that I'm just kind of like, I'm pretty sure you could find a disabled actress that fits a couple of the criteria.
Yeah.
And then use CGI for the rest because you do it for all these other asinine things that we don't need.
No, exactly. So Sarah Biffin, what a story. I think as we go through, like we can imagine the good version and or the bad version of how would they have made this into a movie, because part of the story actually is sort of like an anti-trigger warning. Like she thrives. This is not a story of like a disabled person and like, oh, all these horrible things. It's like she kicks ass and like does well for herself. This is not like, she certainly has challenges, but so I feel like first of all, for a movie, it's like, we need to put some more challenges
inspiration porn.
She's doing too well. She's too capable. Yeah. So I think they'd want to change that as well. So I'm going to begin this with, so later in her life, she wrote sort of a personal, like an artist statement, like explaining who she is in her life story. So as much as possible, I'd like to use some of her words. Although I will say she wrote this artist statement hoping to get some more patrons to finance her art career. So she's being as persuasive as she can. So it's not, but who is ever objective when writing a biography? But she starts it off with, I was born on the 25th October, 1784, at East Quantock's Head, near Bridgewater in Somersetshire, without hands or arms.
I mean, that's getting right to the point of it.
Yeah. So exactly, it's just like jump right to the start. Actually, I will say too, the main resource that I used for researching this was a book. It's the book from the exhibition from 2002. So it's called Without Hands, The Art of Sarah Biffin, and it's by Philip Mould and Company. And then there's also an article I read by Isaka Joshua from artuk.org and an article by Jane Audes on the artsociety.org. And there's some info on Wikipedia as well. But it seems like it's a fast-moving target, Sarah Biffin. Like by 2022, some of the stuff I read in here, I'm like, oh, well, that's different from what the article was I read. I'm like, oh, the article's from 2019. Like people are doing this research and like we're learning more as it happens, which is great. Which is good to see. And it clarified some things for me. I'm just really happy that this exhibition happened and they wrote a book. Thank you so much. So she was the middle child of 5. The other siblings, as far as we know, like no limb differences. So she was born to like, in the context of like British society, working class, by which I mean a farm laborer living on a cottage on land that like he rents to own. So they're not well off, certainly. And I think there's something about like what on the baptismal certificate, it's just like, oh, and this person was born to her and him, no arms or legs. Like people are.
You got to emphasize that at every turn.
It was a notable thing to happen in this part of the world.
I'm kind of surprised they didn't take out an ad, like baby, like, Weekly World News type of thing, or just, Skywrite, if that had been a thing at the time. Like, It's interesting where it pops up where they're like, we have to contextualize this. She doesn't have limbs.
Yeah, just to be clear. And it's interesting because one of the people who worked on this exhibition is a person with the same limb difference. And because she's not in the Regency era, we see a photo of her and you can see like she's wearing like a short skirt, like, oh, she has feet. So I presume Sarah Biffin had a similar situation, like no hands, no arms, no legs, but feet is what she had going on. And this is where it's like, on the one hand, the like tragic, let's make the story melodramatic. It's like the family were struggling and they didn't know what to do and they wanted to put it for adoption. But like the actual story that happened is the family was cool with it and chill with it. And they're like, okay, like let's just figure out how we can make this work.
And why would a family be cool with no arms and no legs? That is just shenanigans.
Who could imagine that a family could love their child no matter what?
I mean, I according to some people, I should thank the good Lord every day that my parents were like, wheelchair, what? We can't handle this. This is just a bridge too far. So, but I think that says so much that right away, the gratitude element that so often is given to disabled people, which is like your family could have cast you out and put you up for adoption in Regency times. You could be living in squalor, but you weren't. So even though that is not historically true, the societal belief, it starts early that disabled people should be grateful for something as simple as your parents kept you.
Yeah, and I think this is part of why I really wanted to include this episode in this like Regency Era series that I'm doing, because like I've been trying to talk about, like people of color, queer people in the Regency Era. It's like they were all there. Like people have always been people. And it's like, and there's always been disabled people and you just don't hear about them a lot. The same way you don't hear about this, like a lot of disabled people now, but like Sarah Biffin became remarkable. And I think how many other people with this situation in a poor household with 5 children, where it's just like, what you want your children to do in general, if you're a farm laborer in Regency Era, I think, is help you till the fields. You want them to do some shit and then maybe marry your daughters off and make a bit of money. But she was not going to be able to do that. But she did a lot. She like figured out, not entirely on her own, but like with the help of her family, she figured out how to do everything that she needed to do. She was sewing clothes as a child. Like she figured out like just get her strategy for painting that she does later is I think similar to what she did for writing and then also for sewing, which is kind of like between her shoulder and her cheek, she would kind of put her tool and then she would just get it done. So she was like helping out around the house. Again, I hope I don't sound like, oh my God, what? A disabled person contributing to society. But I feel like when you think about, especially olden times, you think about a Tiny Tim where it's just like, oh no, this poor little child. And it's just like a burden upon the family. But she was just like there with her family, getting shit done. And lots of other people were like that done too, I'm sure.
I was definitely interested in the logistics because I can tell you, I mean, I have all my limbs. And I'm not clear on how I would be able to I got like a bad shoulder, so you're just kind of trying to figure out how reliant somebody is on certain things. And, somebody like me that utilizes a wheelchair and has to push, your shoulder does a lot of work. And so for me, I'd be like, how does that work? Like if you pull a muscle in your shoulder, because there are a lot of them, I've pulled several of them, like how does she navigate that? If that's how, so for me, I'm fascinated by the logistical nature of how that works out. There's a way to do that respectfully, and I think that what's fascinating is that one of the articles, they talk about how writers were fascinated by this whole topic. They would often talk about how she did average things, and a lot of her performing on in the carnival circuit was her just doing average things, and that we see that manifesting in film too. You look at something like Todd Browning's Freaks from 1932, and a lot of those sequences are realize, just watching these carnival folk engage in the day to day, having lunch, how does the woman that doesn't have, there is a woman with feet, but no arms. And, you watch her lift her leg with a fork and like eat food, and it's presented just very blandly. Like this is just how they move about the space. And the film presents these things as just kind of like average people things. It's not meant to be spectacle. But as we know in the 1800s, a lot of the carnival festival landscape, these exhibitions were often about spectacle. So it's interesting to see those two dynamics and how subtle those shifts are to make something either inspirational or actually really mundane.
Yeah, we're going to get into her carnival era as well. And in this book, this excellent book, thank God it exists, and I read it today. It talks about some other people with similar limb differences and what they were doing in carnivals. And there's one guy, similar to the person in the movie you were saying, like, I forget his name, but he was from around the same era, and he had no arms, but he did have legs and feet. And people would just pay money to watch him drink a cup of tea.
I joke all the time about doing OnlyFans. Even like if the money ever changes, and I had a friend tell me that there is this whole fetish community of people willing to pay to watch disabled people just do stuff. And he was like, like they want to watch you vacuum your apartment, and and I was like, I mean, look, if the money ever, dries up in the writing game, I will definitely, create a landscape where somebody just wants to watch me like eat food and they're going to give me money to do that. That's fine.
No, and that's why I feel like, okay, we're going to get back to her biography, but like the carnival era really fascinates me. And I honestly did think of OnlyFans. I'm like, this is just, people are just so interested in watching people with different sorts of bodies just do anything. And I'm like, now, on the one hand, it's like humiliating and like humans as entertainment. But on the other hand, it's like, if you're going to like pay me to watch me vacuum, like that's sure.
I was just telling somebody today.
Anyway, yeah.
I was just telling somebody today, disabled people should be in charge of their own exploitation. Like if we're going to be exploited, then I should be the one profiting and doing it. And there's a great article that I was reading when I was writing Popcorn Disabilities, and it's called Tiny Tim, Blind Bertha, and the Resistance of Miss Moucher, Charles Dickens and the Uses of Disability by Julia Miel Rodas. And it sets out this really interesting premise about the carnival circuit and how that was a means of making money for disabled people who, for various reasons, maybe couldn't work in factories or any of the other jobs. And she was talking about how the disabled were often placed and sold concurrently with indigenous people and colonized people, and how often the two were really just kind of interrelated. So how they, the whole concept of the strange and exotic person of the Orient is also the strange and exotic person that doesn't have any arms or legs, so the two really did go hand in hand. And then you think of like, John Merrick, the Elephant Man, and this idea that there's always this kind of concept that there's always an able person on the side, right? The bad owner of the disabled person who's like keeping the coin for himself. But a lot of times they said like disabled people were just kind of like, I can't get a job down the street. The factory's like, you don't have arms, you can't make thimbles or whatever. I might as well do this. And they said that a lot of opportunities for disabled people, they got to travel the world. They were feted. They were treated like royalty. And whether that's right or wrong, like those are the options they were given. And in a lot of instances, I'm like, hey, you're making money and you're traveling and you're doing all these things. I would love to do that.
Yeah, it's kind of like within the pantheon and the context of this Regency era that I've been talking about on the season, it's kind of like everybody's just kind of like, I need an income. Like, what is that going to look like? And people are just doing like literally whatever you can, especially like people like Sarah Biffin, who is from this like farmhand family. And so what she did, this is more from her self-written artist statement. So she was talking about how she decided to teach herself how to sew, which also is interesting. It's like she wanted to like make her own outfits, which is, I think, as somebody who's shaped very differently from your siblings, like hand-me-downs are not going to work out for her. So I respect that she was just like, I want my own things. But it also shows that she's a creative and an artistic person. And so she's living with her family. And then so the original research seemed to suggest that she was 13 when she went off to join the carnival circuit, but she was actually probably more like 20. And what she decided was she was like, I want to learn how to paint. This is a creative outlet that I would like to get into. I'd like to learn more about it. And we don't know. There's so many tantalizing mysteries of various people. It's like, how did she meet this person? We don't know. But she meets this guy who is listed in various censuses as an artist called Emmanuel Dukes. So sometimes people are like, oh, he's a showman. He's sort of like what's the Greatest Showman guy?
Oh, P.T. Barnum.
People imagine he's like a P.T. Barnum type, but he seems to be like somewhere not quite there. Like he does seem to be an artist mostly, but he kind of teaches her and introduces her to how to do art. And he's the one who is like, I think that you could make money practicing art and people come watch you do it. Because what we were just talking about, that would be fascinating to people. So this is a way that you can maybe finance what you want to be doing and get your name out there and become a bit better known, because the sort of art that she decides to do is miniatures painting. So these are just little tiny paintings. And it was in a pre-photography era. This is a way that if you like, this is my person who I love, this is my child, this is my dog, like, and you want to have a little picture to take around with you, like you commission an artist to draw a little tiny version of that person, or like they see a big painting and turn it into a tiny version. So, and this is miniature painting. I've talked about some other women artists. It was more like French Revolution era, but that's not that so long ago from her. And this is a sort of art that women often did because it took up a lot less space in the home. It was a lot less expensive than doing like giant canvases and huge tubes of paint. Like women would do like pastels or they would do miniatures, because it's kind of like an art that you can do in the corner of your house while you're raising your children or whatever. So she's like, I want to do this art form that is like, I already know acceptable for like a woman to be doing. And then this mentor, her like art teacher, is like, okay, well, let's just put you on the festival carnival circuit. And so this is where she signs some sort of contract with him that lasts for the next 15 years. And while she was under the contract, she would always only say like, oh, this is so great. He's helping me out so much. And she lived with him and his family. Like she traveled with them and she would live with them when they weren't traveling. And she said, they took such good care of me. And then once she was done the contract, she was just kind of like, it wasn't the best. But while she's under contract, she can't say anything against him.
Yeah. And I mean, I think that's definitely something, the level of control that able people have had historically. Again, this is no different than somebody like John Merrick, the Elephant Man and his relationship with Frederick Treves, the doctor. A lot of the transition from the 1800s to the 1900s often saw disabled people transition from being owned or controlled in some way by carnival people to being owned and controlled by either hospitals, institutions, or doctors. So when the medical community takes an interest in disability and spectacle is taken off the streets and into the medical settings, these kind of medical sideshows, which were essentially attempts to show medical issues with people and educate the public. When the entertainment portion pivots to an edutainment, the control changes. And if anything, doctors ended up having even more control because they were experts, right? They were the ones that were going to be able to tell people whether these people could live. So it becomes a far more dangerous and confining setting, and the rise of institutionalizing of disabled people expands. So it's definitely good that she was able to get out of it, because in a couple of years, a lot of people were just not able to do that once medicine and science becomes the end goal.
Well, and that's just making me think about, so in my book, Rebel of the Regency, available now, I did some research in that because the main person I talk about in that, Caroline of Brunswick, has various medical chronic concerns. And her husband does too. And so I was reading about kind of what the treatments were. And so I was talking with my friend who actually, she is like a professor in history of science. And I was just like, explain to me what was going on with medicine circa 1820. And it was we're in like a leeches era. We're in like there's the four humors. Bloodletting is the cure for everything. Like no germ theory. No one knows about washing hands. So that's where Sarah Biffin is beginning her life and her journey. Yeah. But towards the end of her life, like mid 1800s is where suddenly it's like science, medicine, doctors, hospitals. Like, so I can see like that's where the pivot happened once medicine kind of took over.
Yeah. I mean, Merrick gets the name the Elephant Man because Frederick Treves, jokingly is like, well, his mother saw an elephant when she was pregnant and, it scared her into all of that. And, it's people assume that eugenics plays such a big part in the Victorian, transition with disability. And I mean, eugenics is always part of it. But at the same time, Sarah Biffin is really at this beginning of the 1840s Dickensian revolution of disability that people do not talk about enough, about how Charles Dickens fucked things up for every disabled person from time immemorial. That's we're gonna get there, but yeah, I mean, I think there's a real revolution brewing.
Yeah. Charles Dickens is like stealthily the villain of this story.
He
and
is
I'll tell you why.
the Moriarty, the Doctor No. He's the everything.
Oh, wait. And so this could be in the movie. We could have like her and Charles Dickens like in some sort of nemesis.
Yes.
Like, I think that
yes. You get like Jeremy Irons to play Charles Dickens or something. Yeah. Like, yeah.
You bring in like Colin Firth or somebody just in his like.
I support this too. Yes.
Yeah. So I think this is how we're going to get this off the ground. You have to have some sort of famous man be in this movie.
Right. Well, and you're going to have to add like a love interest or a dude. You need a dude, like an able dude that's going to save her. So we're going to have to create like a guy that is like, I support her and I'm not smothering, but she's also being exploited. Like, so we're going to have to like completely craft another character.
We absolutely are. Because that's the thing, like listeners, like she figures this shit out by herself, basically.
Yeah.
So to make a movie, you'd have to have someone saving her. But in fact, she saved herself. So she's, so just the sorts of like fairs that she's exhibiting in. And this is sort of, I was trying to think like how to compare it to, because when I think of a fair, like here in the town where I live, it's kind of like, well, here's like, there's the fairground rides and here's like the games you can play. And then, some washed up country music star is going to do a concert and it's kind of like, and hot dogs. But the fairs we're talking about, the closest thing I can think is almost like a Disney situation where there's kind of competing, except it's all different independent contractors. It's like competing tents and you have to pay to get into each tent, and each tent claims it's going to be like the most mind-blowing experience you've ever seen. And one of them is maybe a mind reader, and one of them is like trapeze artists or whatever. And Sarah Biffin is one of these, but you have to pay to go in to see her. So they have to explain like, here's what you're going to see. Like you're going to go in this tent and you're going to watch a woman drinking a cup of tea.
You're going to watch a disabled woman drink coffee.
She has no hands.
Nice work if you can get it. I would love to just like hang out in a tent all day at a farmer's market or something and eat cheesecake and have people pay to see me do it.
Yeah. So what she's doing is like, this is her like art career. Like because she's with this guy, David Dukes, or Emmanuel Dukes is who she's with. And he is like, he's teaching her like various art techniques and stuff. And so she's practicing her painting. So people would pay to go into this tent. And what you're going to see is this like 20-year-old woman. She's going to write with a pen. She's going to cut out fabric and sew clothes with a needle. She's going to do some painting. So she's just like doing what her kind of hobbies are anyway, and people are paying to go in. And then you would also get, when you went in, she would write your name on a piece of paper and give it to you. So that was your like, oh my God, I have this piece of paper and it was written by a woman with no hands. Like this was your souvenir. But she was like, became a very popular attraction. And it's interesting to me that as she was doing this, she was also exhibiting her show. So this is something that the people who put together this current day exhibition, they sort of track. So even simultaneously, like she's going from town to town doing these fairs, but then she would also find a place to rent in the town and be like, hey, here's my exhibition of my art. So she's hustling. She's
a millennial freelancer before it was a thing.
Absolutely. Because she's just like, she's got this entrepreneurial spirit. Like she's not just being somewhat used by this able-bodied man. Like she's also figuring out her own career and making her own contacts. And she's getting to know, like the various fairs they go to, she crisscrosses all around the United Kingdom. She goes to all these cities and she meets people, and she's memorable because of what she looks like and because of her talent. So later, when she leaves the carnival, she has these connections, so she's able to keep exhibiting her work. Like she's putting all the pieces in place to be able to leave the carnival and thrive on her own. And I think that's a really interesting part of her story, that she's figured this out for herself. She's like, here's the opportunities and here's what I'm going to do. And she's apparently so, through everyone who's writing about her, who like wrote in their memoirs, who remember seeing her, she's so personable and charming and lovely, which you have to be, as you would know, Kristen, as a freelancer. When you go to one of these events, like you want to be like memorable, but you also want to be someone's like, when they have a job in mind, they're like, oh, I'll call that nice person I met. So she's like winning people over. She's so lovely.
it's definitely, we don't talk about this enough, but disability can be a nice advantage if you know how to use it right. I mean, I've definitely had encounters with, like, celebrities don't remember anybody. And as a journalist, it's always nice to have people be like, I remember you. I'm like, yeah, because I'm the only disabled person that's ever talked to you. So you may not remember my name, but you remember the wheelchair. So it's a good advantage, but you have to have the talent, of course, to back everything up. And the fact that she was able to showcase that she had artistic ability, somebody may not remember her name, but if they're looking for an artist, they're like, hey, I remember that art, from that artist. Get the chick with no hands. So again, all just works nicely together if you know how to work it.
Well, and this is what's interesting to me about the branding that she does. There's some pictures of the pamphlets and the playbills just saying come and see Miss Biffin. She's going to be at the fair. Because can you imagine going to the fair, all these independent contractors are all showing up to town. They all have a flyer. It's just it's like the Fringe Festival sort of atmosphere where it's just see this show, no, see this show. And her thing just says come see Miss Biffin. Her name becomes, so it's not Miss Biffin is huge. And then there's a whole paragraph in the middle. It's she doesn't have any hands, but it's not Miss Biffin, the bear with no hands. It's
it's not
she
saying
herself,
she has no hands, and then in her tiny type, it's got her name. It's not that.
Her name is what becomes famous, and I find that really interesting.
Yeah, that needs to happen far more often than it usually does. Because I mean, even now, I tell people all the time, am I a disabled journalist? Yes. But at the same time, I think it's always heartening to have people that are they know my name first before they realize and there are people that interact with me that do not know that I'm disabled. I'm how do you not Google me and see the first picture, as me as a wheelchair user? So that's really important, again, to create when creating a brand. So she was, again, cutting edge.
And it's just she's this 20-year-old woman from a farm in Somerset. No one's coming in. She's got this guy who's helping her to get into the fair and stuff, but there's no one there to be mentoring her in PR. Her instincts are just so correct. But also her artistic ability. He's giving her these lessons, and you could give me those lessons. I would not be creating things like she was creating in 1821.
No, I took a rogue art class as a kid. Okay. I mean, my parents and my grandparents thought I was a great painter, but I was not. So
she's traveling around. She's traveling around doing these fairs / building her portfolio, doing these other exhibitions in other places. And while she's in Edinburgh, of all places, so there's this guy, George Douglas, the 6th Earl of Morton. And I want to pause for longtime listeners of my podcast who listen to the Mary Queen of Scots series. Yes, he is the descendant of the Earl of Morton from the Mary Queen of Scots series. There's a line of people who are all called George Douglas, and he is one of the Douglas family from the Mary Queen of Scots story. Anyway, his whole thing, his vibe. So this is 1808. So they meet each other. Presumably, we're guessing how do they meet each other, but George Douglas was a real patron of the arts. He was really interested in this. And he's also, in a pre-Charles Dickens era, interested in what I'm going to call just vaguely social justice. Sort of he wants to support people who are on the margins of society. And that's a good instinct. I don't want to say it's not, but he wants to be seen as someone who is doing that. So he wants to do this, but in a performative way.
He's definitely a white abled savior in some way.
Yes. He hears, presumably, one of these flyers comes his way because she's in town. And so he goes to her exhibition and he's wait, wait, but are you really? And you know what? Fair enough. I'm sure there's people at the fair who are pretending to be doing whatever they're doing, right? So he's are you actually painting? He's I want you to paint a portrait of me, but every day at the end of the day, I'm going to take home the work in progress and bring it back so that there's no shenanigans. There's not someone secretly overnight finishing it.
I would have looked at him dude, where do you think really you have to be that guy, the magician, being I have to make sure there's no hanky panky. He thinks that he's watching The Unknown with Lon Chaney and she's just going to actually have arms hiding somewhere.
Exactly. Just pop out at night. And now for a quick advertising break. Did you know that in the 1950s, a flight from New York to Minneapolis vanished over Lake Michigan, never to be seen again? Or that in 1959, a group of hikers died under mysterious circumstances, which became known as the Dyatlov Pass Incident? On the Expedition Unknown podcast from Discovery, Josh Gates travels the world to investigate history's greatest unsolved mysteries. He'll take you through Russia and Germany, looking for stolen objects that were taken by Nazis during World War II, to California to trace the flight path of World War II pilot Gertrude Tompkins, who disappeared during flight and was never seen again, and to Lake Huron to find the final resting place of the Griffin, the very first ship to explore the Great Lakes. So I think that this podcast is going to be really appealing to listeners of Vulgar History, because in Vulgar History we're talking about strange and unexpected stories from the past, and on Expedition Unknown, Josh Gates is literally going to the places where strange and unknown things happen in history and to figure what really went on. So some episode examples, for instance, he explores the disappearance of Amelia Earhart. He finds the location of Captain Morgan's, or he tries to find the location of Captain Morgan's treasure in Panama, like literally going to all these places. He also has an episode about the hunt for El Dorado, America's Titanic, an episode about the Wild West Dalton Gang and where their missing fortune may or may not have gone. So many interesting episodes, including a two-parter about Moses from the Bible, just trying to figure out, like going to the places where these things actually happened to figure out what actually went on there. It's going to be such a fun podcast for you all to listen to. So I invite you all to travel the globe with Josh Gates as he investigates some of humanity's greatest feats and most iconic legends. Listen to Expedition Unknown wherever you get your podcasts. With so many options for weight loss treatment plans, it can be hard to know what's the best choice, who to trust, and what to know about side effects, and if something's even going to work. That's why Hers offers access to doctor-developed treatment plans that are personalized to you. Hers goes beyond medication by offering access to ongoing care, dosage, and medication adjustments, lifestyle nutrition tips, and 24/7 support with no hidden costs or membership fees. And with options starting at just $69 per month with a 10-month plan when paid upfront in full, Hers provides access to options that fit your goals and your budget. Feel like your best self again. Visit forhers.com/vulgar to get a personalized, affordable plan that gets you. That's forhers.com/vulgar, forhers.com/vulgar. Weight loss by Hers is not available everywhere. Compounded drug products are not approved or evaluated for safety, effectiveness, or quality by the FDA. Prescription required. See website for full details, important safety information, and restrictions. Actual price depends on product and plan purchased.
Yes, online shopping is quite literally at our fingertips, but that doesn't mean it's always simple to buy. Whether it's trying to remember one of a million different logins so you can actually place your order, or getting almost all the way through checkout before realizing your card is nowhere near you, there are many hiccups that can get between you and placing that order. Which is why it's such a relief when you see that purple pay button that has all of your information saved, making checkout as simple as a tap of your screen. That iconic purple Shop Pay button is why Shopify has the best converting checkout on the planet, meaning less carts going abandoned and more sales going to you. Shopify is the commerce platform behind millions of businesses around the world and 10% of all e-commerce in the US. From household names like Thrive Cosmetics, Gymshark, and Allbirds, to brands just getting started. And they're not just great at converting sales. If people haven't heard about your brand yet, Shopify can help you find your customers with easy-to-run email and social media campaigns. And they have world-class expertise in everything from managing inventory to international shipping to processing returns and beyond. Tackle all of those important tasks from one place, making your life easier and your business operations smoother. See less carts go abandoned and more sales go with Shopify and their Shop Pay button. Sign up for your $1 per month trial today at shopify.com/realm. Go to shopify.com/realm. That's shopify.com/realm.
The war is over, and both sides lost. Kingdoms were reduced to cinders, and armies scattered like bones in the dust. Now the survivors claw to what's left of a broken world, praying the darkness chooses someone else tonight. But in the Shadow Dark, the darkness always wins. This is old school adventuring at its most cruel. Your torch ticks down in real time, and when that flame dies, something else rises to finish the job. This is a brutal rules-light nightmare with a story that emerges organically based on the decisions that the characters make. This is what it felt like to play RPGs in the 80s, and man, it is so good to be back. Join the Glass Cannon podcast as we plunge into the Shadow Dark every Thursday night at 8 p.m. Eastern on youtube.com/theglasscannon with the podcast version dropping the next day. See what everybody's talking about and join us in the dark.
And we're back.
Yeah, my hidden arms, or I have my hidden guy with arms that just paints my stuff for me. Like, wow.
I know.
Dude.
It's like, dude, like you paid to come in the tent. You're watching her paint your portrait. Like,
Yeah.
Where do you think the shenanigans is going to occur? Anyway, he was a suspicious guy, but she was actually doing the painting, obviously. And so she did it. And he was like, oh my God, this is incredible. This is what's interesting about her story. Like, partially, like his interest was piqued because of her limb difference. And I will say, miniature painting was a very competitive field at this time. So like you're saying, it's just like, if you're like, oh, I need someone to do my miniature. Who's that one with the no hands? Like, she has to stand out in a field. So she knows to use that to her advantage, that she is memorable, that she is different, but her miniatures are really, really good. Like, she's an exceptionally good painter. And he chose her because of this limb difference. But then once he sees how good her art is, he's like, I'm going to help you out.
Isn't it funny when that happens? I only hired you because you were disabled, but then I found out that you actually have talent.
Can both things be true?
Yeah, who knew?
But he's just like blown away. But it's like, it's such a modern feeling thing where it's like, there's so many people right now who are, talented writers, talented whatever. But like, once you can hang on to it, it's like, she's a talented writer. And also she's a single mom of all these kids. Like you're, oh, well, now we'll write about her in People magazine,
Yeah,
like,
there
you can
has
just write
to
about
be
every talented person.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's the thing, is that we love this concept of like struggle porn, like the poverty porn thing. And we see with disability all the time. We love the story of disability being something to overcome, to persevere, to transcend. And, I mean, even in the Art UK piece, it starts off that her story is one of perseverance and resilience. That's all disabled stories, and that's the unfortunate thing, it often makes people believe that disability is often something that is a story of trauma and sadness and gloom, that must be, at the end of the day, this person's still smiling after all the things they've endured. I've encountered people in life that have been like, you're so inspirational because you go out to movies and you do this job, and when you're living in a wheelchair and it's so painful all day long, I'm like, what are you talking about? Because I don't think that my life is as painful and sad as anybody else's. It's just I use a different conveyance to get from A to B than you are, and I'm like, and if you're so concerned about how I navigate the world, maybe advocate for making the world more inclusive to people with disabilities, because it's not just me. But that's such a stigma that perseveres to this day. This idea that disability is often the story of, interesting folk that are coming up against the odds.
Yeah, and every day leaving the house is a brave decision where it's not just like, bitch, no, I just needed groceries. Like,
I literally had a neighbor who I'd never met before in my life come out of her house one day while I was walking my dog and come up to me and say, every day I see you with your dog, I think my life, if you can do it, I can do it, and there's nothing nearly as bad in my life when I see you. And I was just like, a person I'd never met before, I was like, thank you. I would like this conversation to end. And that's exactly what it is.
Yeah, that's horrifying. And I'm sure that that's happening to Sarah Biffin a lot, but no one was writing about it, so we don't know about it. but I'm
Well,
sure
I
it was.
think what's interesting is according to the Art UK, people were writing about her, and usually it was often about her appearance, and how she looked. And I think that's another thing too that unfortunately we have not learned from is that with women, especially disabled women, aesthetics play into everything. If she was a physically, appealing person, they would probably be writing about, oh, isn't it so tragic? She's the Nessa Rose of, the 1800s. She's so tragically beautiful. And unfortunately, because she was kind of a heavy set woman, because there's not a lot of room on her person for where stuff is fat's going to settle where it settles. They're just like, she's so heavy. And I'm just kind of like, wow, she's disabled and you're fat shaming her. Like, great.
This is where it's like this story contains multitudes. And I'm so glad you're here to kind of unpack it all with me, because like she got in the door because I was going to say her foot in the door. And I'm like, no, she doesn't have feet. I'm like, no, she does have feet. So this Earl of Morton saw her painting, realized that she actually was doing it. And he's like, oh, fuck, this is like really good, actually. And also it will make him look good to be like sponsoring this like disabled
for
person.
less than the price of a cup of coffee, you can sponsor a woman with no arms, no legs, but feet.
And honestly, if like the Earl of anything wants to sponsor Kristen or myself, I would also accept that.
I'm here. I also have feet, so I can't paint, but I can write. So there you go.
But he just like becomes her absolute champion. So he's like impressed by her talent. And also I think knowing how good this is going to make him look to be supporting her. He showed this portrait to, I should mention, he has a job, and his job is in the household of the Queen of Great Britain, who is Queen Charlotte from Bridgerton. So he goes to her and to her husband, George III, who at this point is not like he is at the end of Queen Charlotte Bridgerton story. He's like coherent and with it.
He hadn't earned the Mad King moniker that is usually associated.
He was a king doing his king shit. And so this guy, Morton, takes this to King George III and is just like, oh my God, like, look at this amazing miniature. And guess what? Guess how the woman paints it? Not with her hands.
I love that everybody is prefacing these stories with like, do you like that painting? Well, guess what? The chick who did it didn't have hands. How do you feel now?
And this is where in a lot of her artwork from most of her career, she signs it as like by Miss Biffin without hands. Is that at the bottom of all of her paintings it says without hands. Like she's just like, remember me without hands.
She would be a hell of a YouTube or Instagram or influencer. She knows what the gimmick is and she runs with it.
She's got big YouTuber energy. Yes, because she's just like self-promoting to the most amazing extent. And it's gotten her this far. And then the king is just like, oh, this is great. So then like the king doesn't sponsor her or anything, but I think the royal family becomes aware of her because as time goes on, she gets commissions to paint miniatures for some of them, which I'll talk about. So the Earl of Morton sponsors her tuition to go to the Royal Academy of Arts, which like not only is it rare for a disabled person to be there, but for a woman to be there at all is like very rare. But I think because she's got the patronage of this very influential person, because the king was like, oh, wow, that's great. So she's getting like formal art education now, not just that this random guy who took her to fairs, but she's like learning actual stuff. So she studied under William Marshall Craig, an expert in miniature portraits. And in the art exhibition of her show, there's all these, well, I'll hold it up now for those watching on the video feed. The cover of the book, it's like feathers. And so many of her art from this time is, she was told, they're like, paint feathers and flowers because you get so much nuance and detail and you can capture the weight of things and that will help you with your miniatures. So there's so many studies by her of feathers. And I think this is also an era where people were wearing a lot of feathers on their hats and things. So I think it would be pretty easy for her to find feathers to paint. So she's just getting this like amazing training / also dragged around. I don't know if she's being dragged around, but she is going around on the festival circuit as well as doing her shows and training. So this is where you're saying she's like the millennial multitasker. It's just like, yeah, I'm getting my art degree while also working this 9 to 5, while also in the evenings painting, because she's doing commissions for people. Like she's just like, so this is what she's up to until 1821. So ultimately, she's on the festival circuit for about 15 years. At one point, the Earl of Morton tries to get her out of her contract with this guy, Emmanuel Dukes, but he is not able to. This is whatever this 15-year contract to like be in festivals was. It was very strong. But also, she had some loyalty to him is probably part of it, because he was the one who kind of got her out of the farmhouse and into the world. But I will say, like, once the contract ends, she's just like, see you never, and like heads off. But so she's had 15 years to like not just like hone her craft and become better at it, but also like to build up her personal brand. Like Miss Biffin is going to be at this fair. Like people are excited to go into her tent and to see her. And then she's also doing these exhibitions. So she knows venues where she could do her own exhibitions later. She's making, like you said, like all these connections. She's a memorable person. So in 1821, her contract ends and she decides to set up. She moves to London to just become a studio artist. Like, she has the patronage of the Earl of Morton, which is how she's able to afford this. As a single woman, like just, it's like living by, she would always live, like you're talking about, like, what are the logistics of this? Like, how is she painting? And I'm just so curious, like, how is she anything? But she always had some sort of live-in assistant with her.
He had I love that they call him a manservant. And I mean, I've been told that this is a sexist thought process I've been told this by men. So I'm not really clear on if it's just whatever. But I mean, reading this, I was like, so she's got like a dude that looks like Jacob Elordi or somebody, like just helping her get things in her house. And I support all of this. Everybody's getting paid. Everybody knows their roles. Like, you know what? She's a boss to me.
She's like got it all figured out for herself. And this really, like, I know about how she did painting, because this is part of what people just deduce by when you look at her. If anyone just looks up any of her self-portraits, there's always a little paintbrush like sewn onto her collar. It's like, that's just there all the time. So it's like, okay, we know that that's the shoulder she used, and like, that's her, but everything, I'm just like, She's got it all figured out, but I think also she would have to stay in the festival circuit until she had enough money, not just to pay for her own rent and everything, but also to pay a salary for this full-time helper that she requires. So she's hustling. She's getting it done, and it's really, really impressive to me that she's a disabled woman, unmarried, goes to London to start up her own art studio. Like, if you remove the disability from that, I'm still like, oh my God, this is like, just to be a woman, right? At all, just going on your own in 1821, like London, to just be like, I'm just going to be a working class, like I'm going to do this. But she exhibits at the Royal Academy of Arts, where she is awarded a silver medal for her work. So what the category was, and I got some of the details from this book, because the first I just read, she won the silver medal for, the category was like a woman who copies a famous historical painting in miniature category, which is like a pretty, like best sound effects editing. Like, it's getting pretty niche what the category is. But then I also read that, like, because the awards were all for men, there's just one category. There's just kind of like other person. I love that. And so she won the silver medal for like person who did something that's not covered by any of the other categories. And in her case, she did copy, and a lot of what her art training was, and a lot of what everyone's art training was looking at famous paintings and then copying them, because that's how you learn how to make your painting look like that. Anyway, she won the silver medal, and she, like, I love this for her, she wore it.
Wait, hell yeah. Wear it all the time. Yeah.
Every
just
day
like,
for the rest of her life.
Exactly. Yeah. I'd be like, I won the silver medal, and I have no hands. Like, those are just going to be my two monikers.
So she had the medal, like in some of her self-portraits, you can see that she's like got it on a chain that she wears. And the medal was like it's a really prestigious award that she won. It's just kind of funny that the category was like other. But so they would have painted, like the medal was like forged. It had like a copy of her painting in silver on it. And then like the name of her and the name of her painting, it probably said like no hands somewhere on it as well. So she's just like a self, like promoting. So she shows up anywhere. She's like, oh, hey, it's me. Remember me? No hands. Won the silver medal that I'm wearing.
I'd love to think she has a jacket, like a jean jacket emblazoned with no hands on the back. Like, yeah.
Hashtag no hands.
Hashtag no hands. She would have totally done that.
So she wins this medal. She's doing amazing. And then just through her various connections, like through the Earl of Morton and like with the British royal family, she goes on a trip with the Earl of Morton to Brussels, where she is hired by the crown prince there to be his miniature artist for a while. So she's like doing, like, for an artist, the goal is to get royal commissions because that's as much as you can be paid, and that's the most prestige you can possibly get. So she's traveling. She's been all over the UK, and now she like is in Brussels. Like, just, I'm trying to picture also too, like, carriages would be involved. Trains are not invented yet. So she's just like, her and her manservant, Jacob Elordi.
Yeah, they're just traveling all over the landscape right there. That's going to be part of our eventual adaptation of the story. So
I think that would be a beautiful sequence of the carriage ride and
a carriage montage through Brussels. Like, oh my God, get like, Rodrigo Prieto to shoot it or something, like just chef's kiss.
So this is, I know, well, now I'm just picturing sort of like a Sofia Coppola, like just, like the bored person looking out the window of a traveling thing. It's just like Sarah Biffin being like, oh.
No hands. I got to paint. I'm here with this dude in this carriage.
Okay, so now we're going to get into what I think in the movie. I don't know how the movie would handle this, and I've got some late breaking news on the situation, but she gets married. And this is a situation that no one can quite figure out what the situation was. One theory is that she, in her like personal branding genius brain, is like, I will do better if I am a married woman because then I'll be seen as more respectable. So I just need to, in name only, marry someone so I can become Mrs.
She's making a Taylor Swift decision. Like, I got to get married. So she's got to find a Travis Kelce.
I don't know if she found a Travis Kelce. Who she found was William.
She was looking for a Travis Kelce, and she probably ended up with like a Martin Short, which is still pretty good. I mean,
no, Martin Short's pretty good. No, what she ends up with is like the other guy Taylor Swift was with, that guy from that band, the like greasy British guy.
Oh, Matty Healy.
That's who she gets.
Okay.
So she ends up with Matty Healy, aka a retired like Navy guy / banker's clerk named William Stephen Wright. So they get married. We know this. She starts signing her pictures as Mrs. Wright with no hands.
With no hands, of course.
Which is funny to me because she made such a name for herself as Sarah Biffin. Like this was her brand for 20 years, and now you're going to change it? Like,
I mean, I mean, at least go like Sarah Biffin. Right. Like, do like a Priyanka Chopra Jonas thing or something.
Yeah, or something like Mrs. Wright, formerly known as Sarah Biffin, the artist formerly
known as Sarah Biffin. I mean, why not? Yeah. I mean, just prince it up.
So she marries this guy, and it seems as though they never cohabitate. They never have anything to do with each other. So it really feels to me like not this, but like a green card marriage where she just like found someone.
It's definitely a visa relationship.
Yeah. Like their relationship, like they get married, they don't seem to have anything to do with each other at all. But then he somehow becomes involved with her financial stuff where it's like, wait, did this guy marry her for some sort of shady reason? Maybe, but well, maybe she's like, I just need to become a Mrs. because that's the next level in my branding journey. And he's like, you have a lot of money. I will marry you and then manage that money. So we don't know exactly what is going on here. It's not.
This is why the prenup can be a beneficial thing. So.
Yeah. So this situation, the whole thing is just kind of like in the bad movie, I think this is where you're going to bring on that. Who's the guy who plays Lestat on The Vampire?
Oh, Sam Reed.
You bring in Sam Reed and just to be like smoldery looks at her to be
this
like,
is the hottest movie ever. I mean, it's gonna burn up the screen. I'm ready for this.
Yeah. So you bring him in, and like I think if you're going to write this as a novel, if you're going to make this as a movie, like you need to make sense of this situation, which is just like this guy just kind of comes and then he's just gone and she's Mrs. Wright now. And like, who was he? Where did he go? What was that? I don't know.
It'll be a fever dream sequence. We're going to need like some psychedelic images or something. Yeah.
She wakes up and she's just like, wait, I'm married?
She's like,
that
wait,
person?
I'm married? And then she goes to bed again and wakes up, wait, I'm not married anymore? I mean, okay.
I'm married, but there's no change to my life at all? Okay. But I'm Mrs. Right, no hands, no. So she pauses her painting career at this point. I think she just has enough money she can just like rest for a while, and good for her. Like, just she's been nonstop self-promoting for 25 years. It's like, yeah, let's just like take a break. Let's just like hang out with my not husband who's not here. Anyway, but what happens is, so 1824, they get married. She takes a pause from painting. And then tragically, George Douglas, the Earl of Morton, dies 1827. And that was her income, was him supporting her. So this is kind of like, she gets back to painting, is what she does. And she also, like so many other creative people today, and then we've talked about it on the podcast before, she also starts teaching painting because that's a way to make some money. And what's really interesting to me is that just like some of the flyers were in this book I was looking at, and or they're talking about how she was advertising her services. And so it's like, come to her house and she'll teach you painting, or she'll teach you through correspondence courses, which I love.
I do wonder if people got confused, because she's going to be all learn painting and people are going to be all right. But am I learning painting, or am I going to learn painting with no hands? Like, yeah. What am I learning here?
What she's advertising is just like, come train with Mrs. Wright, a painter who's been exhibited. She won a silver medal. It doesn't say come learn the no hands method. She's just saying, I will teach you to paint. So presumably, as far as we know, she's not teaching disabled people to paint. She's teaching.
I would love it if there was just a wave of people engaging in this art style where they're like, they have hands, they have arms, and they're just like, I learned this method. Wait, people aren't doing this? They're using their hands?
Their hands? Yeah. So she's teaching people painting. I think what a lot of especially the correspondence stuff, is people would like paint, and then they would mail the painting to her, and then she would look at it, and then she would like write some notes, like, oh, you should put some more orange in this part, and you should do this in this part, and then send. So she's kind of like providing editing feedback to. Anyway, this is like, what is this now? Like her fourth income stream. Like, she's exhibiting, she's painting, she's taking commissions, and now she's teaching. Like, this is the millennial hustle. Like, this is so much today. It's like she's on YouTube, she's got a Substack, like she's got some SpawnCon, like she's doing everything she can. And so this is where she starts kind of moving around a bit. I think it just gets expensive to live in London when you don't have a royal patron anymore. So she's kind of going to place, and when she gets to a new place, she will just do an exhibition, and then be like, did you like the paintings in this exhibition? Want me to teach you how to paint? Like,
you want to get the no hands method?
So she's just kind of like moving around to various places. She exhibited at the Royal Academy of Arts a few more times. Like, you know, her patron is gone, but she's built up this like, I don't know if it's a community necessarily, but it's just like, she's so well known. She's this, you know, popular miniature artist. People know who she is, and she's won these people over, right? Like, she's memorable. They hire her, and she's such a pleasure to work with. Like, everybody is happy to keep helping her out, which becomes more and more necessary financially, as we'll see. Oh yeah. So this is from one of the articles that was saying people were just, as we were talking about before, like so interested in just like, how does she do anything? Like, explain her life to me. So like one American journal included an item talking about how her wedding ceremony was held. So it said that her husband like held the ring against her shoulder because no hands, can't put a ring on a hand. And then afterwards he put the ring on a gold chain, and then she wore around her neck, which she is wearing in some of her portraits.
I mean, okay, it would have been cooler if he had like fashioned an earring or something out of it, and she just wore it as like a lone earring or something.
The earring on? Yeah.
Yeah, that would have been cool.
That would have been more interesting, but there's so few details like this. But like, how did she do daily? I am like all those people. I'm just like, I don't want to watch her drink tea necessarily, but I'm just like, did she have a wheelchair? If so, what did it look like? Like, I just want to know, what's her day to day? What accoutrements does she have? Like, I would just love to know.
These are questions. I'm right there with you.
So she's painting. Oh yeah, this is the part where I was talking about when she was in Brighton, which is interesting. Brighton, a place that I mentioned in my book. That's the resort town popularized by Caroline of Brunswick's husband, Prinny, George IV, who Sarah Biffin was hired to paint a miniature of George IV. I was just like,
small world.
The Regency era. But you know what? Prinny is always going to show up in every story. So there's a description of her because she also, so this is interesting because I just learned this. So as her like fifth to sixth income stream, she invites people into her house to just watch her painting. Like, so it's kind of like what she was doing on the festival circuit, but now just in her home. So she's combining, but it's kind of like this self, like there's not somebody else making her do this. It's just, so now people can just come by and watch her do her painting because she's just like, she needs money and she knows people want to watch her. So like, why not charge people to, and she has to do the painting. But this is where we get this description of a woman who took painting lessons from her. So Sarah Biffin, circa 1829. Was described as a heavy-looking woman. She wore a turban and was always seated on a sofa, which, side note, that's some information about how is she navigating day-to-day life. She sits on her sofa. Her paintbrush was pinned to a large puff sleeve, which covered the short stump of the upper part of the arm. She fixed and removed the paintbrush with her teeth when necessary to wash the brush. When painting, she leant her right shoulder forward, almost touching the table. She declared that she considered that for painting, she had the advantage of those who had arms, for surely it was easier to paint with a short brush than with a long stick. I did want to mention, because it said the thing about like the stump of the arm or whatever, and like this woman wouldn't have known that because Sarah Biffin always sewed her sleeves shut so nobody could see what was going on in the shoulder area. Cool. So this is how we get sort of the image of her, like head close to the table. I do think, like you were saying about like shoulder pain and stuff, like this is the amount of painting she had to be doing, like to get into that position. Like I'm sure she's been doing this for years.
Definitely
like,
got arthritis and whatnot. Like there's a lot of issues.
I know, and physio not invented yet. Yeah. So her manservant would carry her when she needed to move.
I love it. I want to see this.
This is a beautiful image in my mind. Anyway, so she finally settles in, she's just like this era of her life of kind of like her patron is dead and she's teaching, she's exhibiting, people pay to watch her do the painting. Like she does this for like 10 years-ish. This is just kind of what she's up to, just like hustling. And then as she's like, maybe the shoulder pain contributes to all of this, but like her health starts to suffer. Also, she starts to lose her eyesight. And I wonder if that's like starts to lose her eyesight or if it's like she needs glasses now, but it's oldie times and no one really understands about glasses. I don't know.
Possibly. I'm not versed in Regency era optometry.
I am only slightly. I only know that actually we're going to get to this. One of the royal princesses did have glasses because I saw them on an exhibit once. And she was so like, she needed glasses so extremely that even though like you weren't like, it's like unseemly for a woman to have glasses, but she needed them so badly. She's even painted in portraits wearing the glasses. Like she wore her.
Not.
So, her health is deteriorating and she is not able to paint as much as she was or as skillfully as she was able to because of health problems. And so this is where like her community, this is where I'll use the word community, like rises up because she has so many friends. She's such a beloved figure, etc. And they put together what I think of as sort of like a Kickstarter combined with a Patreon where they're like, can people take out monthly subscriptions of paying her money to live and to pay her manservant? And one of the people who's involved in this is Jenny Lind from The Greatest Showman.
The Greatest Showman. Yes. I love that finally Jenny using that power for good.
Mm-hmm. So she's one of the people involved in this. And so as part of this is where they are just kind of like appealing to everybody. It's like, what did they say? Like to those who, they put an ad in the newspaper, I think, to those who have at any time whiled away their hour in her studio, listened to her anecdotes, joined in her cheerful laugh, or been impressed with admiration at her persevering talents. This appeal is more especially made. So just to ask, like, can you everybody please? And it's like, would you care to make a monthly donation to Sarah Biffin? It's not just like, give me some money. It's like, would you like to become a monthly patron to Sarah Biffin? And they write to Charles Dickens. And what does Charles Dickens, like, Charles Dickens, his reply survives. He declined to contribute because he said of the enormous number of similar applications of which he was in continual receipt.
He says there's too many crippled people asking me for money and I can't accommodate them. So okay, this is what I've been holding in for the last hour.
Mm-hmm.
So Charles Dickens is an asshole and he ruined disability for everybody. And I'm glad he's dead. Because here's the thing. He publishes A Christmas Carol in 1846 and he creates Tiny Tim, this character that is this saintly little boy that everybody falls in love with because he is sickly and disabled. But he's disabled in that he's got a crutch and he's just got a waxy pallor. There's been a lot of criticism about like what did Tiny Tim suffer from, and most people say it probably was malnourishment. So the question of whether he's a disabled character, regardless, the whole point of it is that England at this time goes mad for Tiny Tim, a character that is not real, by the way. They start putting up Tiny Tim homes. They want to take care of the disabled. And so for Dickens to have created this disabled guy and profit off of the character and have everybody be all, I want to help the disabled because Tiny Tim. And then to have him look at a disabled person and be like, sorry, you aren't some waxy pallor Dickensian street waif that is cute anymore. You're just a regular old disabled chick. I can't give you money. That guy can go just piss up a rope.
No, but and also what Charles Dickens does is he's like, I'm not going to contribute to her appeal. And then after she dies, he includes disparaging references to her in Nicholas Nickleby, The Old Curiosity Shop, Martin Chuzzlewit, and Little Dorrit.
He creates a disabled character that made everybody believe that disabled people were childlike, cute, physically appealing little angels in the house, and then spends the majority of his time acting like, but real disabled people, especially disabled women, chunky hags I don't want to look at, and I'm going to proceed to just write this burn book all the time about how she's this horrible, disgusting figure. Again, Charles Dickens sucks, and if you are a person that thinks Tiny Tim is awesome, I do not want to talk to you about it.
It's the surprise, jump scare of Charles Dickens appearing in this story just to do the absolute worst.
To have Charles Dickens, I think what is just hilarious is for him to create this disabled character as he sees it, that is childlike and perfect and just disabled enough, But again, it's that perseverance, right? Tiny Tim ain't asking for money. Tiny Tim is making old rich men smile with his little hello governor candor, okay? And he's just providing yucks, not the yucks like bad, but like yucks, okay? He's providing yucks and happiness to a crusty old guy with a lot of money, and just making him feel like such good people, okay? No, that's what he sees disabled people. He doesn't want to see a real disabled woman that's like, it's really freaking expensive in England. Can you maybe give a monthly donation? You put it next to your milk delivery. He's like, yeah, no, what have you done today, Sarah Biffin? No hands, okay? To make me smile. Nothing.
Yeah, you know what Tiny Tim is? I feel like he's like, oh, I'm just grateful my parents didn't give me away to the orphanage when I was born.
Tiny Tim is just Tiny Tim, who again, not a real person, but England really thought he was real. Okay, Tiny Tim is just like, oh, Charles Dickens, thank you so much for inventing me. I think you're awesome and you're pretty, and everybody thinks you're awesome and great. And yeah, Sarah Biffin sitting over here with no hands, being like, but I paint. And Dickens, I think there's going to be a scene where Dickens is like, nobody thinks your painting's good, no hands.
Yes. Yeah. He grabs the metal, throws it on the ground.
Exactly. He's like, you're just a disabled person. Nobody wants that. They want Tiny Tim, okay, with his waxy little skin and his hay penny, and he's just so charming. What have you done other than create 18 lines of work for yourself?
You know, like the timeline doesn't work out because I will say not spoiler, but I mean, Sarah Biffin, she passes away. In 1850, age 66, Charles Dickens outlives her. So our movie can't end with her killing Charles Dickens, but I think our movie could end with the ghost of Sarah Biffin killing Charles Dickens.
Or it could end with a disabled person reading his book in front of him, and he's like, hey, that's A Christmas Carol. I wrote that book. What do you think about it? And they'd be like, oh, I think it's derivative and you suck and I hate you. And I'm a disabled person and you've ruined my life. And then they throw it in the mud. And then the carriage that we saw through our brilliant, beautiful Brussels montage runs over it. And he's just like, I just want to zoom in on his shocked and disappointed face.
The movie definitely needs to end with Charles Dickens losing.
Oh yeah, definitely. Like 80s villain style. Like we need like a sweep the leg, like Karate Kid moment or something.
And then everybody on the street, like at the end of Dangerous Liaisons, where everyone looks at Glenn Close and they're all like, oh, you're a bad person. Everyone looks at Charles Dickens like,
shame. Yeah, we need to have somebody follow him around with like the shame bell or something. Yeah.
Absolutely. So Sarah Biffin, she's various health concerns, some sort of stomach issue, ultimately, is what she dies of, age 66 in 1850. She is buried in Liverpool at St. James Cemetery, although her grave is no longer able to be found because people don't take care of things, because people are terrible. Anyway, a few months before she died, she had one last exhibition at the 1850 Royal Academy of Arts exhibition. And then just to like briefly touch on, so we talked about her miniature was sold at auction in 2019 for £137,500, which is the most ever that like a miniature from that era by anyone was ever sold for. And it was much more than they expected to sell it for. The first exhibition of her work in 100 years, because she was exhibiting throughout her whole life, but was called Without Hands, The Art of Sarah Biffin, was held in the galleries of Philip Mould and Company in London in 2022. And some Sarah Biffin miniatures pop up here and there. When they pop up, they go on auction. Now everybody knows they're expensive. So I think people are trying to see like, ooh, do we have any of these miniatures? And so we have a few minutes left, and I hope that you can help me go through these categories quickly to score Sarah Biffin in our 4 categories for vulgar history that we do. And the first category is scandaliciousness. How scandalous was she seen by society at the time? And I feel like not at all, really.
It's a 0. Like, she didn't really have a lot of scandal. There's nothing that we've said aside from the imaginary feud I've created between her and Dickens. So yeah, I'm gonna say no. That's 0 scandal.
Because I think the fact that she was in the fair, but like everyone was just kind of like delighted by what she was doing, and then
she's not doing anything particularly. Like, there's a difference between like drinking tea and painting versus like come into this tent and you'll see a chick, with tassels. Like, I think so not scandalous.
There's nothing scandalous at all in her story, I don't think. And I wonder if part of that is because she was not seen as a sexualized person.
Very true. Yeah. I mean, I think that, disability at that time, it was more, there was an emphasis on emphasizing the mundane, because again, it was more about the inspiration. So yeah. And again, eugenics is still very popular at this time too. So we didn't want disabled people procreating, so it's not surprising.
Yeah, just a lot of the scandal often comes from people being seen as being promiscuous or whatever. And that was just never anything that anyone ever said about her, ever, because that was not part of her personal brand. The next category is the scheminess, which I think she was actually so schemy. I think she was so good at finding the right winning over the right people who would help support her at like all the self-branding stuff, like getting married just so she could be like, oh, I'm a respectable married woman now. Like she had to pivot to teaching. Like I feel like she was definitely thinking ahead.
She's definitely a 7 on the schemy scale. Like the fact that she was able to to do so many different things. And again, people were just like, we want to help you. She was clearly doing it right, that people still wanted to support her, even when she was like financially destitute. Most people don't, somebody calls me looking for money, I'm usually like, click, depending on the situation. But no, people wanted to continue to help her. And whether that's because she was disabled and they felt bad for her or not, she's still scheming. I love it.
Well, and I think also the way that she was on the fair circuit, but she found a way to also start her own independent entrepreneurial business on the side. So she was set up. So when her contract ended, she could just go right out and do that. And she had all the contacts. She had everything set up. I feel like she was so savvy. And just for anyone, for any entrepreneur today, I think she's just had these killer instincts, and she got it all done. She made it all happen for herself. The next category is significance. Which is, I would say, to disability history, to art history.
I mean, she definitely gets a 9 there. She's so important. And the fact that I didn't know about her is a shame. I think that, again, disability history is still relatively new history. And we should know the people that were invested in culture at that time. So she definitely shaking up the art scene, shaking up the disability scene. We need to know her name.
And I mean, just in terms of significance, she is mentioned in 4 to 5 Charles Dickens novels.
Exactly. Infamy sometimes. I mean, if she had been alive in these times, she'd have been all like, why are you so obsessed with me, Dickens?
Yeah. Yeah. She'd be like, Dickens, I just made you this miniature that will self-destruct and blow up in your face. That's the end of the movie, is that he gets a little miniature in the mail, and then it just a bullet comes out of it somehow. So the final category is what we call the sexism bonus, which is how much did being a woman living in a patriarchy hold her back? And for context, I did read in this book about some other disabled artists of the time. And the thing is, whether you're disabled or not, male artists get paid more per commission. Male artists get more opportunities. Male artists, just whatever you're doing, they're able to charge more to come to their house and watch them paint. She just could have made more money, basically.
Definitely. Yeah. And I think disability also is something that is limiting, in the grand scheme of things. Ableism plays such a role in things. And even though she was getting opportunities for a disabled person, which is amazing, you have to wonder how many opportunities she didn't get because of her own limitations, as well as people assuming that she couldn't do it.
Well, and then just the challenge she had traveling, and the fact that her household income, she had to pay for a full-time carer.
Yeah. I mean, all of that, it costs money. And she probably might have been, they say that I forget how much the average disabled person spends on living expenses, but it's always more than an able person because we require accommodation.
Well, and this is part of why I think it's admirable that she was hustling so hard, but the reason she had to was for these reasons.
Yeah, exactly.
Her cost of living was just higher for being a woman on her own and for being disabled. So in terms of the sexism bonus, I don't know to put a number on that.
Definitely would put a 7, probably.
Okay. So this lands her with a total score of 23 out of 40. Just for context, that puts her in. Well, for instance, Jane Austen has a 22, so she has 1 more point than Jane Austen.
Love to see it.
Nothing against Jane Austen. I did an episode about these Regency era lesbians, the ladies of Llangollen. They're at 23, and I think she would have loved to have painted them.
She would have definitely partied with them.
I think she would have loved to have gone to their little house, their little hobbit house, and just had a nice time, honestly. But it seems like everyone had a nice time with her. I think she would her social skills were clearly got her in the room. Well, I guess her disability made her memorable, and then her social skills kept her in the room, and then her art talent made people then give her money.
Exactly.
The perfect storm. Kristen, can you just quickly tell everybody again the name of your book?
Yeah, it's called Popcorn Disabilities, The Highs and Lows of Being Disabled in the Movies. You can buy it wherever you buy your books. Amazon, your local library, request it through them. However you want to consume it. There is an audiobook for people who have visual or don't like to read their books. That way. So it's available in all formats. Please consider buying it.
And I do also want to just suggest that everybody should follow you on your website, The Film Maven, because you do such good you do essays and things, and that's important as well. But your film reviews are so useful to me personally, because I like reading reviews by somebody who like thinks a lot like I do. Like when you recommend a movie, I'm like, well, I've never heard of that, but Kristen likes it, so maybe I'll like it. And I always do.
Yeah, it's thefilmmaven.com. I do all sorts of things. I do a series kind of similar. If you like stuff like this, I started a new series called Women They Warned You About, looking at women in Hollywood who've been labeled difficult. So I did my inaugural piece on Katherine Heigl, and then I have an upcoming episode or upcoming article on Lupe Velez.
So everybody needs to follow Kristen in all of the things that she's doing. And thank you so much for joining me for this episode and for brainstorming a pretty amazing movie. I think we're ready to pitch this.
Right.
Royal patrons, if you want to invest in this movie idea.
Yeah, we got casting. It's gonna be great. So yes, thank you so much for letting me hang out.
Yeah, it's been such a good time. Thank you so much. So as Kristen said, she has her website, The Film Maven, which is where you can find all of her film reviews. She is, I will say, I always like to see her takes on things. And I often agree with, she talks about a movie I've never heard of and she says it's great and I see it and I'm like, oh, it is great. I very much vibe with her take on things. She is one of the film critics who had positive things to say about the recent Wuthering Heights movie. So, which makes me intrigued to see it. I haven't seen it yet. I've been busy, but I hope to see it soon. Anyway, I really suggest that you follow Kristen and her podcast, Ticklish Business, which I have recorded a guest spot for, and I think that will be coming out. I think it came out last week, actually. Anyway, if you want to hear me talk about the movie version of Pride and Prejudice on Ticklish Business, that's the thing I did. And then, of course, her new book, Popcorn Disabilities. And I also have a book. It's called Rebel of the Regency, the Scandalous Saga of Caroline of Brunswick, Britain's Uncrowned Queen. It is now available for sale all over the place. And I know some of you have already picked up a copy. Many of you have already read it. And I would really appreciate if you have done so. If you've ordered it, if you've read it, it's really helpful for me just to let more people know about the book. And a way that you can help with that is if you leave a review for the book on Amazon and or on Goodreads, because that just kind of like shows the algorithm that there's enthusiasm about this book. So it makes the algorithm feature it to other people who might be interested in it as well. So if you could do that favor for me, just leave a nice little, even just rate it, just give it a little 5 stars, even if you don't want to say anything about it. Or you could just say like, Anne wrote this book, she's great, and I think everyone should read this book. Whatever you want to say about the book. But I will say the response has been so fabulous. It's been so great to meet people at the various events I've been doing. And my big news is that I have another event coming up. I'm going to be in London, England. I'm going there for my personal reasons, but I have made the time to meet up with the Tits Out Brigade in London. And so if you'd like to take part in that meetup, and I'm not sure what it's going to be, is it going to be a bookstore event? Are we going to all meet in a pub somewhere? Are we going to just all stroll around a park? I don't know. And it really depends on how many people are coming. So please RSVP so I can figure out how many people are coming. And then we can make a plan of where and when we're going to meet. Although I do know the date. We're going to be meeting on Sunday, March 15th in London, England. If you want to take part in that, I would be so excited to see you. And you can RSVP at vulgarhistory.com/RSVP. And we'll be back next week with another episode of Vulgar History. We're going to be having a very special episode talking about actually someone with a big connection to London, England, and to British history. And I'll leave it at that. But until next time, keep your pants on and your tits out. Vulgar History is researched, scripted, and hosted by Anne Foster. Editor is Christina Lumagi. Theme music is by the Severn Duo. Regency Era artwork by Karen Moynihan. Social media videos by Magdalena Denson. Transcripts of this podcast are available at vulgarhistory.com by Aveline Malik. You can get early ad-free episodes of Vulgar History by becoming a paid member of our Patreon at patreon.com/AnneFosterWriter. Vulgar History merchandise is available at vulgarhistory.com/store for Americans and at vulgarhistory.redbubble.com for everyone else. Follow us on social media at Vulgar History Pod. Get in touch with me at vulgarhistorypod@gmail.com.
Hi, this is Rob Benedict.
And I am Richard Spate. We were both on a little show you might know called Supernatural.
It had a pretty good run, 15 seasons, 327 episodes.
And though we have seen, of course, every episode many times, we figured, hey, now that we're wrapped, let's watch it all again.
And we can't do that alone, so we're inviting the cast and crew that made the show along for the ride. We've got writers, producers, composers, directors, and we'll of course have some actors on as well, including some certain guys that played some certain pretty iconic brothers.
It was kind of a little bit of a left field choice in the best way possible.
The note from Kripke was, he's great, we love him, but we're looking for like a really intelligent Duchovny type.
With 15 seasons to explore, it's going to be the road trip of several lifetimes. So please join us and subscribe to Supernatural Then and Now.
The world of Sonic the Hedgehog has been thrust into a not-so-dark, not-so-stormy hard-boiled detective story that probably nobody saw coming. Follow Sonic and the intrepid Chaotix Detective Agency as they take on their biggest case yet. This high-flying, action-packed adventure will take them across the world, fighting for every clue they can find. It's one heck of a tale, which is good, because this story might be the only thing that can save their lives.
Well, if that's all, I can just dispose of you.
Wait, what?
All will be revealed in Sonic the Hedgehog presents The Chaotix Case Files. Listen now, wherever you get your podcasts.
The Chaotix are on the case.
For 8 years, we've been asking the same question over and over again. How did this happen? My name's Mandy.
And I'm Melissa, and we're the hosts of Moms and Mysteries, the true crime podcast with over 55 million downloads.
We're two Florida moms who are obsessed with mysteries. Each week, we do deep dives into fascinating true crime stories.
We cover everything from infamous cases like Casey Anthony
to the bizarre and complex crimes right here in our home state, like the shocking murder of FSU professor Dan Markell.
We bring you the facts, but with warmth and wit you'd only get from two friends who have been hooked on mysteries since childhood.
Join us for new episodes of Moms and Mysteries every Tuesday and Thursday.
Listen to Moms and Mysteries on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcast.